Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, today we're back on the doors of that 1950 Chevy truck, the 5-window, and we're going to be doing some wet sanding. We've got them all primed, ready to go, so all we have to do is do our final sand so that it can be set aside and wait till the cab's done, and we'll spray some color and clear on these things. So wet sanding is not rocket science by any means, but you can do it in such a way where you have a lot more labor and just waste a lot of time. So I'm going to go over the things I do to make sure that I get them nice and smooth and ready for color and clear. So let's just jump right into this. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is wash the panel. Now, these have been sitting around and they're always in my shop. There's no kids running around, there's no hand lotion, no washing machine running nearby with laundry soap and stuff, but I'm going to wash them anyways because either could have fly poop on them, anything could be on them. So I'm going to get them a quick wash with my dedicated wash mitt here with just plain old dish soap just to scrub any impurities off the top. Now, if you think, well, I'll just sand them off, well, what'll happen is you can actually push them down into the primer. So you want to make sure that you wash it well. You're going to get it wet anyway, so just scrub it really good inside and out. Make sure it's nice and clean, then rinse it off, and then you can start sanding. So I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to wash this real quick, and I'll bring you right back. Okay, we got it washed really well. It feels real good. And now this primer laid down really nice, but it's still got a little bit of orange peel to it. So we have to get the orange peel out first before we can actually get the sand scratches out from the other sandpaper. So ultimately we're going to shoot for 600 grit wet sanding on this, and it's going to look really glossy when we're done. This polyester primers, they really get shiny when you get into the 600 grit range. So I'm going to be using my handy sanding pad. If you guys don't have one, get one. They're super cheap. And we're going to start off with 320 wet sandpaper, wet dry sandpaper. And the reason I'm going 320 is because if I try to go straight to 400, I'm not going to get as much production done, first of all. Secondly, I'll tend to miss spots, and then I'll have to go back and keep redoing them. So if you go through the steps of the sandpaper, it's really important to go through the steps. So let the 320 get all the orange peel and any other things you find in the primer out, and then what we'll do is we'll take the 400 and get the 320 sand scratches out, and then we'll go jump to 600 and get the 400 sand scratches out. So I'm going to sand this real quick, and these things are blocked out. They're flat, they're smooth, no waves or anything. So I'm okay to use the sanding pad, and all I'm trying to do is get these nice and glassy smooth. So we don't have to worry about anything in particular when we're sanding, but you want to make sure you don't sand edges, and you want to make sure you get down inside your grooves down in here. So I'll tend to concentrate on those a little bit by hand or with the edge of the sanding pad, and I'll get down in there, and then I'll sand up and down away from those a little bit. So when I'm sanding the larger areas, all I have to do is get close. I don't have to bang down inside those grooves or over an edge or something. So watch your edges. This 320 will not go near any edges because they are smooth and ready to go. I'll probably do the edges with 600 and just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to start sanding this real quick, and then I'll bring you in tight and show you some of the techniques I use to make sure that I get everything covered properly. Okay, I got a clean bucket of water right here to rinse frequently, and we're going to start off by doing this little body line right here. And like I said earlier, we're going to go ahead and sand that away from it. So I'm going to try to get all of this around this radius, and then I'm going to get up here just a little bit up the curve. And so what we're going to do is we're going to carefully just go down there with light pressure and kind of get down inside that corner really well, both sides. And we're going to use our hands a lot to make sure that that feels nice and smooth. So you don't want to just bear down inside that, and that just a couple little passes like that, it's already looking really good. So I got a little bit around this curve here. And remember, we're taking orange peel out. That's it. So we're not trying to fix anything at this point. We're at the point now where we're just getting to the final stages. And so I'll go at an angle like this, little diagonal, and just kind of work my way down. And since we already laid down inside that groove, we don't have to worry about trying to get down inside there. And I just have this curled up a little bit so it's not banging into anything else, any sand, anything else. And we're coming down about 1 inch, just like that. So I'll run my hand down through here, and it feels pretty good. It's a little rough over here. So I use my hands a lot instead of my eyes because there's water on everything. And if you can usually feel the difference. So it'll be super silky smooth, and then you'll feel the little bit of roughness. So just use your hands when you're sanding. That way you're not having to try to dry things off all the time. And you'll do a really good job that way. Of course, later on, once you get done, usually there's a spot you missed or something has shown up, and that's fine. Just go back. Don't be lazy. Make sure you go back and get it. That way when you spray the base coat on, it lays down super nice, and you're laying the foundation right now of getting a perfectly flat clear coat. So if you spray your base coat over rougher primer, then you're going to have to pile on more clear on to try to get that smoothed out, and then you have to cut and polish that. So do yourself a favor when you're sanding your primer for your final time and get it nice and smooth and glassy. So I'm going down inside this groove right here by where the window is, and I'm just using little short strokes. I'm going to slide right along there, and I've got a little groove here, and I'll do the same thing like I did down this one. Now this 320 cuts pretty fast, so I want to be careful. And if I go through somewhere where I don't want to, actually there's a little bit of primer showing through. This primer is slightly different color gray than the other one underneath, but that's no problem. But I can see where I'm going through, so I certainly know I got all the orange peel off there. So now we're going to move on to the field here. Now, when I sand the field, I don't go in circles. I go, you know, kind of like I sanded these doors in originally to make sure I cover everything. So along the edges, I'll make sure I stand, you know, along the edge in that direction, and then I'll get the whole perimeter, and then I'll usually start working on the field. Just light pressure. We're going to go all the way around. Okay, so now the perimeter feels really, really smooth. So we're gonna just go into the field, and that's where it gets easy. And I'll just go at a little bit of an angle and roll over these edges. I don't wanna sand any lines into it. You can actually sand waves into clear or primer or anything. So you wanna make sure that you're diligent about the way you're sanding and keep a nice, firm, even pressure with your fingers on the pad. Don't just push down with your fingers out here. I try to use my fingers as flat as possible, my palm. And we'll just go across like this, and I'll backtrack the other way. And we'll get around this corner here, right on this radius. Just like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the whole thing with the 320, and then I'll bring you back when we're hitting at 400. Okay, so we're done with the 320 now. I just did this area and this area with the 320. The smaller area I'm going to do with the 400. The reason I do that is because it's really easy for me to screw up, and this is such a small area. I can do the 400 and cover that. It's a few square inches, so it's no big deal. I don't mind spending the extra time. That way I don't sand through an edge or screw up somehow on one of these little body lines or something. So what I did, I sanded this whole thing, then I rinsed it off, and I used the sanding pad as a squeegee, and I squeegeed all the water off and then let it dry a little bit, and then I looked at it real close, and I found an area over here I didn't sand as well as I should have. So I went back, and you guys will be able to feel when you're sanding, you'll hear the difference and you'll feel the difference when it gets nice and smooth and flat. So just keep that in mind when you're sanding. Take your time. We're going to switch over to the 400. I'm not going to bore you with that, but always use a fresh piece of sandpaper. Don't be cheap. You know, this door will eat 3 pieces of sandpaper, 320, 400, and 600, and then I'll chuck them. I won't try to reuse them. So I'm going to go ahead and I let this soak in the bucket real long time, so it's nice and flexible, and then we'll just start sanding again. And then what we'll do with the 400 is we're going to go over this probably twice. just to make sure that it's nice and smooth. And then the 600 is going to go super quick because the 600 is just taking out minute scratches from this 400. So that part goes really fast. And if you do everything, the steps in before that, then that should be your quickest part, other than going around and chasing on these edges really lightly, you know, super lightly on the edges. And I do that by hand, and I'll show you that when we get to it. So let me sand this with a 400 and I'll bring you back. Okay, so we got the whole thing sanded with the 400 and it feels really nice. We could probably stop right there, and that base coat would lay down super nice on there. Now, I sanded around here with the 400 by hand, just using my thumb and my fingers and getting down inside these nooks and crannies. But before I move any farther, I'm going to take a purple Scotch-Brite pad. I cut it to a little small piece like I do, and I'm going to actually wet sand with this to get down inside these grooves down in here and make sure this is done really nice. So it's really hard to get your fingers down inside, you know, way down inside those grooves. So I always try to make sure that they get a good scuffing before I go to the 600 or whatever final sandpaper I'm going to be doing. So I can get down inside there just like this. It only takes a few seconds, and it's really worth it because, especially down in here where all the spot welds are and everything, you know that sandpaper jumped over all those. So you're just kind of doing yourself kind of a favor by doing this, and that way you know everything is scuffed really nice. And just dip it in water, and it actually works really nice because the water carries away all the sediment while you're doing it. So we're ready to, I'm going to rinse this really well, and then we're going to move back and then hit this with 600, and I'll show you how I'm going to do some of these edges. Okay, so we've got it rinsed off around the windows, done really nice with the 400, and I'm going to use 600 now, and I've had this soaking in the bucket for a little bit, so it's nice and soft. And you'll notice I only sand in straight lines. Now, I don't go circular motions. A lot of guys sand in circular motion. I really don't like that because when you're polishing, you can't tell if that's a sand scratch or if it's in the clear or what. Plus, sanding in straight lines is a lot more efficient. You're doing, especially on big flat panels like this, not that super flat, but you know what I mean. It just lets you cover area a lot better than going like this and moving around like you're putting wax on or something. You tend to push down in one spot when you're doing that instead of having your hand nice and flat, just going in large strokes. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and sand this with a 600 real quick, and I'll bring it back and I'll show you how I'm going to do the edges. You notice how that paper's gripping right there like that? This is so flat and smooth right now, it's trying to pull the sandpaper out of my hand. So that's a good sign. But I will not sand these edges until this sandpaper is good and worn out. And if it's not worn out enough when I'm done doing the field here and around here, then I've got a worn out piece in there that I'll use in the shop, because I want something nice and flexible and kind of, you know, not too gritty when I do these edges. So let me sand this real quick and I'll bring you back. Okay, so the whole panel's been sanded with 600. I did up around the window. It's feeling super slick, nice, super smooth. It's going to come out really nice when we get the base coat and the clear coat on it. So now it's time to do the edges. So the key with that is not sand more than you need to. Now I've got it in my hand, and I'm just going to go over it super lightly. I mean super light. It's better to go back and forth a few more times than you think you need to, because you're going extra light than pushing too hard and going right through. So, and then once you've made a few passes, you want to run your fingers down there and feel how it feels. If it feels nice and smooth, then you're done. If you feel it's not quite smooth enough, then go over it a little bit more, but just super light touch. And that's all you do right there. And I'm going to do that all the way around, all the way on the top, and get all that. And then we're going to rinse and wash this thing real well, and then I'll bring you back and we'll see how it looks. Okay, the door is done. I actually flipped it over and sanded the inner panel and then the edges, and I did everything. So everything's been sanded very well and then washed. I got the wash mitt out and I scrubbed this thing top to bottom, inside and out, to make sure there was no dirt anywhere. And then I rinsed it 3 or 4 times, just flooded it with water and got it nice and clean. Then I dried it with a towel, and then I set it out in the sun to bake for 2 or 3 hours to let that skin, the sheet metal, get really hot, to make sure all that water was evaporated out of all the little nooks and crannies and the seams. So it is ready to be painted. So we're really good. I'm happy the way it looks. It's super smooth. And if you look down here at an angle, you can see the lights on the wall. You see the sheen out there. And that's what happens with this type of harder primers. it'll get, you know, a glossy, not glossy, but maybe a satin sheen to it, which is really nice to know you've got it super smooth and it's ready for color. So the next step, I've got the other door done. Now I just do is the cab. Now the cab, I have to do the interior and the exterior. I'm not going to film any of that. It's just me more sanding. So hopefully next couple of videos we'll be spraying color and clear on these things and getting them that much closer to getting them back on the chassis. Okay, that just about wraps up my project for the day, getting this door sanded all the way to 600. It's clean, ready to go. I think I'm going to take it inside the house, put it next to the other one, protect it, and then all we got to do is the cab, interior and exterior, and we're really getting close to spraying some color and clear. Really happy about that. What was your project for the day? Send me 3 or 4 pics of whatever you're working on. I don't care. It could be a lamp, go-kart, boat, motorcycle. I really don't care. Send me some pics. I'd love to post them at the end of the video so everybody else can see what you guys are up to. Thanks again for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and mash that bell icon so we get notifications whenever I release a video. We'll see you on the next one.